Welcome everybody to our closing session. All of us, after 2 days, for some even 2.5 days of intense discussion, you might feel a bit tired. Actually, I do. And I thought it's probably also due to the fact that I walked quite very often between Prague, Sofia and Vilnius. So this is a real distance I made. And maybe it's also for you in a way. We thought about this concluding session that we have one person, it's Roger Pielke once again, our keynote speaker, who was asked and prepared in a way to give a kind of brief feedback to all of us from here. Then we asked during the conference 3 people who took the chance or will take the chance to give us a brief feedback from different perspectives, right from the audience. And then it passes over to all of you. We will get some feedback from you, some of them with an idea of what was really surprising for me in this conference is that, and this is what you explained to us then, or what I will tell my friends, my colleagues when I'm coming home about this conference. This is also interesting for us, just to learn about how we can do better in the next years. But now, first of all, the floor is to Roger Pielke once again. Just some remarks from your side.
Thanks, Michael. I'll have a PowerPoint presentation and a 2-hour lecture now. No, just a few very brief comments maybe to start our last discussion and a discussion over lunch. First off, I want to just say how appreciative I am to be included in this meeting for reasons I'll explain. But it's really an impressive diversity of institutions and people and perspectives that I don't think we have in the U.S. in the area of technology assessment. I started my PhD work about 2 years before OTA disappeared in the United States. And so over the last 25 years, I've become less and less clear as to what technology assessment is. And after the last several days, I'm even less clear. But I do think there's some core questions, however we choose to define TA, that come up, I think, in every session I was at, in every discussion that I've had. And they are, what should we do? Who is we? How should we do it? And I think, importantly, and this is the question I raised in my keynote, is what is the role of TA in answering all of those questions? And I think one of the wonderful advantages the European community has over the US community is that the institutions that are designated to answer these questions are much more identifiable. So there's a network, the PACITA network of institutions in different EU member states and partners who are focused on questions of technology. I think in the United States we have a similar diversity of institutions, but they're not so clearly identified, and they certainly have nothing like a network together. In the work that I do that would be equivalent to TA, we just call it science and technology policy research. And I think after being in the sessions this week, there's a huge opportunity, I think, for greater interaction and collaboration between people who do science and technology policy. And right now there's a few of us who go back and forth across the Atlantic both ways, from Europe to the US and vice versa, but there's a much greater opportunity to integrate those perspectives, because a lot of what we call policy research is just research on decision making involving technology and science in the US could learn a lot from the PACITA community and vice versa, I think. And I will just give you an example. One of the big differences that's often articulated between the United States and Europe has to do with the notion of precaution and precautionary policies. I've long thought that's problematic, and after listening to several of the talks today, I see it as, I'm not sure there's a big difference between the US and European perspectives. There are political differences, and I'll give you an example. This is an example that's raised by Dan Sarowitz, one of my colleagues. He's at Arizona State, but he's located in Washington, D.C., and he's written in Nature about e-cigarettes. And if you ask yourself, what's a precautionary policy with respect to e-cigarettes? vaping, the new nicotine delivery machines. And on the one hand, you could talk about the harm of e-cigarettes. There's chemicals, there's additives that are placed there. Chemicals go into your body, they would cause harm. So you could say, well, we want to be precautionary with respect to those harms. But on the other hand, you could say, well, what are the harms of not replacing smoking cigarettes with e-cigarettes? There's potential harm on that side as well. And to me, that raises the question of, that I started with about political myth and so on. A US versus a European perspective may be different on e-cigarettes. I'm not sure. It hasn't advanced very far. But it does raise the question as to what our role as academics looking at the introduction of new technologies, even mundane technologies like e-cigarettes. And after listening to several of the talks, I just heard a great one on TTIP and international trade about harmfulness and harmlessness. I begin to see that the distinctions between the US and European policy discussions is probably less significant than the politics would have in our academic perspective. I'll end it there. I just want to thank the new friends I've met, the old friends I've seen here, and the opportunity to participate with you, and I hope we'll have more such opportunities. And I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for this insight from an interesting perspective. And the adaptation to the policymakers is definitely one of our main issues we need to have in mind in all of our different countries. Now we are starting with a couple of brief remarks from different perspectives, and we are starting with a PACITA member, but from a country where no participatory parliamentary TA was really institutionalized so far, from Hungary, and it's Judith. Just a couple of
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm not very happy and not very proud of the fact that Hungary doesn't have TA practice yet, and there is a small capacity, human capacity, I mean, and not too many trained personnel. However, we learned a lot from the PACITA project. I'm very, very grateful, and my colleagues in the Hungarian team are also very grateful for this opportunity. And I guess that we can use the knowledge, the expertise of our more expertise or knowledgeable colleagues. And this conference was very, very interesting for us. Not only because it was a very good and high-level scientific meeting, but also because it seemed to me a TA practitioners training seminar. So we could really learn a lot, and it was, I could discover many elements from TA practice, for example, mutual learning and networking and platforms for dialogues. So I would like to congratulate to the organizers and thank you them very much. If we go home, I won't forget this knowledge and experience, and we got a new reinforcement to strive for a Hungarian TA unit to distribute the knowledge. And it was very interesting for me to listen to Roger Pilke's keynote speech about Mies, political Mies. It reminded me of a very interesting article written by Professor Wolfgang Glenzel from the Catholic University of Leuven. It was about 7 Mies in bibliometrics, facts and fictions in quantitative science studies. And this article was published in the Journal of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and it was surprising that it has become very popular in a very short time. And yesterday I thought of a new article written about Mies in TA, and I'm wondering if it could be so popular in a short time, and I'm afraid that it wouldn't be. Just because there are even in Hungary, in a small country, thousands of researchers and research administrators and policymakers who are familiar with bibliometrics, but who are not familiar with TA. So this seems to be our mission, or one of our missions, to let people know what TA is. And I hope that in the next follow-up conference, we will hear a lot about expanding the TA landscape in Europe and all over the world. And I hope that in the post-communist countries, there will be a new generation who will be able to create a different political culture, and will be able to use policy advice and public engagement in a proper way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Our next perspective will be from Australia. So Justine Lacey, she's from CSIRO. As I learned already, I said always CSIRO, but the word is yours.
Thank you. So thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for having me here from such a long way away. CSIRO has been fortunate to be an observer to the PACITA project over the last few years. And as you heard from Peter yesterday, for us we're learning the language of TA, so it's an acronym that we don't use at home. I had quite a vested interest in this conference, though, because I wanted to understand a new acronym. I wanted to understand RRI. And I was really interested in the way RRI had permeated so many of the conversations that I heard at this conference in a way that I didn't hear it in Prague 2 years ago. And so it was moving very quickly. And I heard it described in many different ways. On the first day, it was old wine in new bottles, and there was a lot of critique around this term. And there was a lot of request for definition, and I will admit, I was one of those people. I wanted to know, what is it? What is it? And was it a political myth? I mean, it kept shifting throughout these days. And then I thought, maybe I have to be like a good researcher and sit with uncertainty for a minute and just give it some time. I ask the public to work with uncertainty. I ask government to work with uncertainty. Maybe I can work with uncertainty as well. We'll see how it goes. I think the big take home was something that I didn't expect, and it kind of coalesced a lot this morning in a session that was arranged by Peter Ashworth and Franz Brom on energy poverty. And something that's been bubbling away in my mind is how we work across borders. How do you retain a strong national identity in the work that you do in TA, but coordinate the efforts that you are making around sort of these grand challenges? Because you can't be one country working on these things by yourself. And what made me think about that is some involvement that I have in South Asia with some foreign aid funded work. Because normally an Australian doesn't ever think about working across borders because we don't share our national boundary with anybody. We sort of sit there out there on an island. And what I think I want to learn more about in PACITA is how you've come to be able to do that so very well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the final invited remark, so to say, is by Stefan Bröchler. He's also representing the network of technology assessment, and this is his perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Yeah, telling my colleagues, the first question I have to my colleagues, how can I use this as a USB stick? Indeed, it was a very exciting conference with many ideas on the concepts and the results and the horizon of technology assessment. Main insights, yes. As a political scientist, I'm very impressed about the efforts of the parliaments in the field of technology assessment. I can say Parliament matters. And at the third point, in brief, what do I expect from follow conference? And I think an interesting and important question could be, how do we as technology science researcher advise defect democracies and autocratic regimes? Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, prepare yourself. What are you going to tell at home? I take 3 remarks right now. 1, 2, just 2. Okay, that's probably even better. 3. Here we are. Mashi, you're first.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I had a double role here. I'm a member of Network of Technology Assessment, the coordination team, and partner of PACITA. And I had to take a look at different sessions and see how these networks work together. I would say diversity. That was the word that actually helps, and I heard that it's very important for us. At the same time, language barriers. We speak in different ways when we are in our mother language or second, third mother language. And scientific language is different. And I will take home, I shouldn't actually take it home because my colleagues are all here. But I would say in Austria, we will work on this point, language barriers, and we need platforms. PACITA was a project. In the next months, it will be a platform for us to continue our discussions and give a place for these discussions in different languages, different cultures. Thank you.
Great.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm first time abroad, and actually I'm an engineer, and I'd like to say about my point of view of these topics we discussed the previous 3 days. TA is a great thing, in my opinion, because it strengthens the demands of publicity, and social actors can get what they demand. But when I come home, I will raise a question. And what about the inventors that push the technological progress forward? I didn't hear much about them on this conference. And I think maybe the principles of TA and responsible innovations should be integrated into educational systems. And I think this is very important. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the last one?
Okay, I do have a question regarding the relation of TA to policy making, which I would like to share with you. So on the one hand, I think we are all stating that we are living in a more and more complex world. Maybe sometimes we are overstating this. On the other hand, we are observing that policy making is tending to much more and more simple answers. For example, if it's a security problem, we are having surveillance as the single answer. In economic policies, 20 years, 30 years ago, we had a set of objectives from full employment, really it was full employment, equalized trade balance and different objectives which we put into relation to each other. Now we only have the reducing public debt. And yesterday we also heard how important it is if we want to reach policymakers to have simple answers, so simple conclusions, 1 or 2 pages, and at the end it should be even 1 or 2 sentences. So if we are doing this, my question is, are we not becoming a part of the problem of oversimplification, then contributing to, let's say, more sustainable solutions? So maybe we should also be strong enough also to demand from our addressees to think in more complexity.
Yeah, great, thank you. So, now it's time for me to say goodbye and to hand over to Lars Klüver, the coordinator of the PACITA project, who has the last words, of course. I will wear my tie proudly, as I know that this was an excellent conference, and I thank you all for this. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Historical moment, yeah.
Oh, it was like
yeah, take it like this.
Well. We're at the end of 2 things, the conference and the PACITA project. The whole idea of the PACITA project was to expand the landscape, we could say. And I think that has been done in many ways. It's been done geographically. There are countries who now are in the path of establishing TA, but maybe even more important, there has been some seeds planted, and that has been going on in PASITA, among the PASITA partners, but even more importantly, I think much beyond PASITA, and I think that's important to acknowledge. Also, we have expanded the landscape collaboratively. I would maybe say networkally, and I think we have proven to ourselves that we can and we should work together across Europe. We are able to do it. We are able to do it very, very competently, and we add something to Europe when we do it. And so I think that gives promises for TA in a new way in the future. It's important that TA is nationally rooted. That's why we have our cultures. That's where a lot of policy making is going on. But it's so important that we also have the other level. And PASITA has proven that we are able to do that, and we're able to do it well. I also think that we have expanded the landscape conceptually. One of the big and important lessons in PASITA has been that we could just not continue talking only about parliamentary TA. There are many places in Europe where parliaments are not as strong as they are in the northwestern part of Europe. In those countries, politics are not necessarily made by the parliament or around the parliament. They are made in other circles, among other actors. And therefore, we began to develop the idea of policy-oriented TA, and that was very much pushed by the Eastern European partners in the project. The interesting thing is then that I think the rest of us learned a lot from it, because we began to think of our own work as not really parliamentary TA, but of course Parliament as a very important actor, but we began to think of ourselves working with policy-oriented TA, which is maybe a much better term. Not maybe, it is. Also, it's expanded the landscape politically. As I told you a couple of days ago, we had those two parliamentary meetings with parliamentarians across Europe. And I think technology assessment now has a backup on the political level across Europe, which it did not at all have before. There's actually a consensus among parliamentarians across Europe that this is something we should have and have more of. We're just waiting for it to happen, and we should work for it again. But basically, there's a consensus that not only more of, we should have it all over Europe, and it should be collaborative, working together. So, on top of that, I will also say, I also think PASITA has meant something capacity-ally, and I mean we have trained each other, and it has definitely not only been the TAs training those who want to be TAs. It has been a mutual learning. It's been about developing practice where we can see new ways forward, because we learn from those who are in other situations, and we can begin to see that we also have to act differently at home. So PASITA has definitely made a difference. The big question comes then, how are we going to do these kind of things when PASITA is not there anymore? The vision, of course, is to have something like a PASITA 2, and that should definitely not be a PASITA with 15 partners. It should be a PASITA with 28 plus partners, covering the whole of Europe. That must be our vision, and that must be something we should work for. That is what makes it possible for us to meet again and develop our thinking together again. And that is what makes it possible for us to be even more and covering even more places in Europe, and therefore see this horizon of working together all over Europe in the future. What is the next horizon of TA? Well, if you look at that horizon over there, it's quite diverse, as there's diversity, as Mashid said. But although there's diversity, there's also something in common. It's towers all of it. And I think the one important thing is exactly what Machine actually said, you said it before me, but I want to say that the next horizon is definitely with more diversity than we see now, as I see it. And that's not any good. I think it's necessary. I think it's where we learn that from our diversity and from our different practices and our different thoughts, our different cultures that we bring in together, that makes us richer, all of us. I'm optimistic for continuing these kind of efforts. I think we have the political backup. I think it will take some time before we will have the chance again, but I guess we will have the chance again at some point, and we will definitely work for that. Are you exhausted? Are you happy? Okay, because that was at least what we hoped for a couple of days ago, wasn't it? That we would be happy, and what we also foresaw that we would be exhausted. So I will just end this by saying thanks to Constanze. Where are you? Julia? Stand up, Julia. The whole ETAS team, can you stand up? Everybody from ETAS, stand up. It's half of us, or something like that. Thanks. Also thanking our advisory panel, our keynote speakers, all the presenters and all those who listened. Actually, thanking all of us for being here, being together, making it 3 great days. And the only thing left is to say, thanks for all, get well home.